So last week I recorded a video. This video, but not really. It was a longer video that spanned several different scenes and about a 2,500 word script. But somewhere along the way I lost what I was looking for in the video. I think I just ended up missing the point. So I'm going to re-record it in a much simpler format that I think you'll like more. This video is about I'm going to give you 3 methods I use to ensure that I have a good character backstory every time. I'm going to try and focus on telling you what to do rather than what not to do, but I will explain to you what is and isn't part of your backstory and why. A lot of this advice is good for aspiring writers too, not just tabletop RPG players. So please watch this video before you write a feature-length film detailing your character's backstory from birth to your current campaign. So first, let's talk about what I'm not going to cover in this video. I'm not going to cover your character's race or origin because that's really a separate thing. It can definitely influence your character's backstory, especially where you're born or who you're birthed to. The traditions or the values they may have are important as well, but it's not really your backstory. I'm also not going over your personality. Your personality is derived from your backstory, sure, but it's not your backstory. And the reason why your personality is derived from your backstory, by the way, is because you should look to your backstory, especially at the beginning of a campaign, to determine how you respond to a situation. I'll let you know now, it's important to move away from that later in the story, because your character is growing throughout the story. They should be. You shouldn't have a static character. You should have one that is dynamic and changing throughout the story with everything that happens. But I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And finally, I'm not going to go into any detail about any of the backgrounds in the books, though I will say they are a great resource and I'll talk a little bit more about them later, but I'm not going to analyze every background that's available in the player's handbook. They are a good foundation though. So I'm going to quickly just go over what a backstory really is. A backstory is your direct tie to your campaign and your world setting. And your backstory should be compelling for you and your GM to explore throughout a story. This is something that not many people talk about, but I think breadth is more important than depth in character backstory. Having a wider backstory is going to be better because you can explore more facets of your backstory. Rather than having a super deep backstory that is limited in scope, have a broad backstory that's wide in scope. And I'll give you this tip: don't write much about it. Writing less is typically better. For example, just say your parents are alive and you have parents, rather than writing a novella about each of their lives. Also, a good backstory includes the good and the bad. Nobody just experiences one or the other, and flaws are important. While you should explain why you like your character, it's also important to understand that nobody's perfect. And having a more realistic character will make roleplay more interesting and lead to character growth. It's a win-win situation, really, to have a realistic character, I think. And finally, this is one of the more important things though, your character backstory should include reasons why your character wants or needs to move forward in the campaign at hand. And I'm going to cite Dimension 20 in saying that obligation is the death of fun. If your character feels obligated to do things in a story and doesn't have a reason for it because their backstory doesn't tie into it, then why is your character doing it? It's the death of fun. You as a player are not going to have fun doing that. Next up, we'll talk a little bit about inspiration and finding resources that will help you create your backstory. I find inspiration all over the place. Horror movies, video games, family, stories, stuff like that is all inspiration for me. Really, after playing for so long, you become so creative in your ways of thinking that you can just kind of find inspiration in everyday life. It's very cool. Ultimately, I'm probably not going to be able to provide you with the ultimate idea for your character's backstory. It's more of a personal choice. I'm here to help you refine it once you find it though. That being said, I'm going to provide you with a few resources that may be able to help you refine it more or help you generate that idea in the first place. We'll start off with the 2014 D&D Player's Handbook. You know, it's fine. I like it. It's the gateway drug that gets everybody into the game that I love. But you know, the backstory solutions in the book are kind of light. Provides you with a long list of backgrounds and ideals and bonds and flaws that go along with those backgrounds. But it's pretty much just a mechanical means for you to get extra stuff and kind of know what you're doing as a role player, I don't know, it just doesn't have what I want in a backstory available in the book. It doesn't really have any of those world-binding features that I think good backstories should have. Of course, it's not on Wizards of the Coast. There would be no way that they could account for every detail in your homebrew world and their own world, Faerun. It just wouldn't work. It's too much for a book. Overall, the D&D Player's Handbook from 2014 is going to get like a 4 out of 10 on the AJ's helpful backstory scale thing. That being said, I'm going to talk next about Xanathar's Guide to Everything. Oh, how I love the little eyeball creatures staring at a fish. This book from 2017, it's good. It's a good one, especially so for the backstories like we're talking about today. It includes a lot more details and customization options that are definitely going to help you create your backstory. Pretty much everything from page 63 to page 71 is worth reading, and rolling on those tables is great. It's going to be able to help you build a family life and be able to help you understand why you chose a certain class, and maybe even help you choose why you chose a specific background if you're going with the backgrounds in the Player's Handbook, that is. And, who doesn't love a billion tables you can roll on, too? I mean, come on. Everybody loves rolling dice. You know what? I'm going to roll some right now. You know what? Yeah, I love rolling dice. So Wizards of the Coast, give me more tables to roll dice on. Please, more tables. And Xanathar's Guide to Everything, probably like a 7.5 out of 10 on the AJ's scale of helpful background stuff. Next, we've got the Ultimate RPG Character Backstory Guide. I said that right, first try, wow. It's by James D'Amato. This is a really good one. It's got lots of different options as far as genres kind of go. We're going to be sticking to the fantasy genre this time, but there's genres like horror and sci-fi as well. It has great options for building your character's culture, a faction you may be in, your character's own order, or a special title you may have, among many other things. But my favorite part is the 5 victories section. I would recommend filling out at least one of these victories for any tabletop RPG character backstory. The 5 different type of victories that are available in the book are victories over a rival, circumstance, superior, enemy, and even yourself. And it might even show why you became an adventurer. Since it's not Wizards of the Coast, I'm going to promote this one. I'm going to say you should probably buy this one. It's like $10.59 on Amazon, and you can buy it for a little bit more at a local bookstore. So I'm going to give this like an 8.5 or a 9 on the AJ's background helpfulness scale thing. Pretty much because it's not a Wizards of the Coast product, and it's actually helpful. But, there's not enough random tables, so it's not getting to 10. I mean, come on. Let's really quickly cover when to create your character's backstory. You should avoid writing your character's backstory before you know what system you're playing, what the game will be about, and after making a functional character in that system that you're playing. You should certainly talk to your GM about what the game is going to be about before you even think about writing your character's backstory. This is because you want to tie your character's backstory into what the game is going to be about so your character can play in the game rather than watch the game. But really quickly, I just wanted to touch on when you should write your backstory. A lot of people do it much too early. I would avoid pre-writing your character's backstory at all costs. So finally, let's get into my 3 tips for creating the ultimate character backstory. So I think you should look at the ground rules before you create your character backstory. I have 5 ground rules for my advice. Number 1, generally make someone else. You're already yourself. You're playing a role-playing game. Play a role. I think using yourself as a foundation to build on is a good thing though. I would just go as far as to say you should avoid inserting yourself into the game. Rule 2, gimmicks and stereotypes are okay. They're there for a reason. They're easy to work with. And I definitely encourage you to lean into aspects of certain stereotypes. And I'm going to vehemently warn you against being the shady guy in the corner that doesn't want to participate in the game at all. Being the edgy, mysterious guy in the corner is far too easy. And you know what they say? An easy life is rarely meaningful, and a meaningful life is rarely easy. Do you know who said that though? Ollie North. But really, rule 3, you should make a team player. It's going to ensure that you have much more fun. Rule 4, only write as much as you need to get your character concept across to everybody. Writing too much is going to prevent your GM from using your character's backstory creatively in the story. So this is why I was suggesting breadth over depth earlier in the video. Having a wide character rather than a deep character initially is going to allow you to explore more of those depths during the game, rather than writing them alone in your room. This is going to make sure your character stays dynamic and does not become static as the game goes on. But number 5, rule 5, have your backstory develop a character you want to be and a character you want to roleplay as. Okay, so those are the ground rules. Pretty simple, I think. I don't think they're going to be that hard for you to follow. Let's talk next about levels of information. This is probably one of the more important things that I look at when I'm creating a character's backstory. Again, I'm going to warn you, only write as much as you need to fill out each level of information. The first level, public knowledge. This is information you should be willing to give to just anybody on the street and not really feel that bad about. It should include things like your name, your approximate age, and maybe even where you're from. It could also include things like your career or stuff like that. It's pretty broad. I'm not going to go over everything that could be public knowledge, but next we'll talk about private information. Private information is things that you would share with like your close friends, maybe your party members, and definitely your family members. It's going to include your upbringing and your early family life, as well as enemies you may have. And most of your backstory information that isn't public knowledge, or the third layer, deep matters. Deep matters is the meat and potatoes of your character's backstory, and you should probably write the most here. If you're gonna write a lot, at least write a lot about deep matters. It should include your reason for adventuring, whether that be out of necessity or just desire. It may include traumatic events that your character has gone through, or a drive that is somehow seated in your character's backstory for knowledge, power, or wealth. Deep matters should also include your character's goals, whether they be long-term or short-term goals. The goals should lead to change in your character's current status, and they should have your character wanting to move forward and participate. And you should understand that realistic goals constantly change and adapt. Once we as human beings achieve a goal, we strive for that next one. We're ambitious people. Adventurers are especially ambitious also. And I would avoid goals that would satisfy the character before the climax of the story. Having a character kill one demon and then deciding to retire before the story's even over would kind of suck, huh? But that's just my quick ramblings about the levels of information that I would use while creating character backstory. I would look at these levels while I'm writing the backstory. I'm going to leave you with this to think about whenever you're done writing the backstory. The most important thing your backstory does is tie you to the world. Do you have that tie? Make sure you have it. It's important. Make sure you have the tie to the story. But your character's goals and desires stemming from your backstory are those ties to the world. And if you want to be an advanced player, you should realize that. By the way, if you want me to take a deeper dive into character goals, leave a comment below. Also like and subscribe. And I'm going to end off the video by giving you 10 questions you should ask yourself after you write your character's backstory. Does your character have a reason to be in the story? This is the most important question. It's the first one. Before you even start creating your character's backstory, you should have already known, what the game's going to be about and how you can tie your character into it. You can work with your GM to create these ties that will bring you into the story, rather than having you experience the story from the outside. Your character should be looking to achieve a goal throughout the story, and the goal should have your character desiring to interact with the story to achieve it. Number 2, does your character have room to grow? Nobody's perfect. Your character should not be perfect at the beginning of the campaign especially, and everybody strives for more. Number 3, this one isn't necessarily going to be applicable to every character, but what is your character's religion? Your character should choose a religion based on their backstory. Maybe their family before already had a religion, or maybe this character chose a new religion because of a traumatic life event that happened. And it's not required in every game to have a religion, but it's a nice detail. And it's also important to realize religion's on a sliding scale in these games. Your character may value a religion less or more depending on how devout that character may be. Number 4, is your character in a faction? If so, talk to your GM. They may have a pre-existing faction that would be perfect for your character to fit in. They may create one for your character to fit in, or they may even allow you to create your own faction. Number 5, does your character have living family members? If so, I'd recommend leaving them open-ended and letting your game master use their creativity to maybe include them in the story later. Number 6, does your characters have friends or enemies from their past? Again, leave them open-ended and let your GM know that they exist. And for the past 2 questions, I would avoid writing too much detail about these guys, maybe just defining features or how you know them. Obviously, you'll know your family because they're your family members, but your enemies and your friends, I mean. Number 7, has your character met another party member before the start of the campaign. This may be best decided at the table before session 1 or during session 0. Of course, I can't predict every way a character may meet another character before the beginning of a campaign, but I can tell you that it's really nice for party cohesion if some of the characters had met each other before the start of the campaign. If the opportunity arises for that to happen, I would say jump on it. Number 8, would your character's backstory make the character known to the public at large? If so, I'd let the GM know, that way they can incorporate it into the story. And number 9, does your character act fundamentally similar to other party members? For example, if you're playing a criminal rogue and everybody else in the party is ultra religious and do-gooders, maybe you should switch characters. You don't want to be that one guy tearing apart the party's cohesion. And you don't want to think that the other party members are going to turn against you at some point either. But often, giving up your first character idea and choosing one that promotes party cohesion is generally a good thing. And finally, number 10, do you want to roleplay this character? Well, that's all I've got for this month, so I hope it helped you create a character backstory you love and can have fun with, and that others love and can have fun with. If you liked the video, please leave a like and subscribe. And I'll be posting another video next month. So, you'll get another one in a month, and I'm not gonna spam your inbox, I promise. If you have any additional questions or supplementary information, leave a comment below. I will be answering all questions in the comments for the foreseeable future. For the moment, goodbye, but not forever.